be or not to be? That is the question. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? She walks in beauty like the night. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. O captain, my captain, why does the caged bird sing? I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Miami Book Hut. This is now episode 9, and I'm your lovely host, J. Adrian Betancourt. Poetry has given us some of the most memorable lines in the English language. So in honor of today's guest, I thought I'd begin with a small cento, a poem made entirely of famous lines from other poems. You probably recognize a bunch of them, if not all of them. Anyone who watched a Dead Poet Society, one of my favorite movies, certainly heard many of those mentioned. And today's guest is a poet, not just a poet, but Miami-Dade County's Poet Laureate, just named such in April, right? I believe April 1st. She is a colleague of mine at Miami-Dade County, where she was recently recognized as the mayor, as that Poet Laureate. Nicole Tallman, welcome to the program, and congratulations on your appointment. Is it an appointment, a recognition? What is it?
It's an appointment.
Wow.
And thank you so much for having me, Javier. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm impressed that you started with a cento or cento, depending on your pronunciation, if you're going with the traditional. It's a really important form, I think, to be able to honor other people's work. So thank you for putting that together. That was beautiful.
Okay, I'm going to have to make that a regular feature of the show here. I'll start with a poem. I've always loved poetry. And honestly, one of my favorite films is A Dead Poet Society. Not a dead. I think it's just Dead Poet Society. Although, it's become controversial in recent years due to one of the subplots, but still a fantastic movie about poetry. Mm. And ever since then, I've loved poetry. I've dabbled in it. But while some of us dabble, some of us really take it very seriously, and have even published books on poetry and created programs around poetry. And so you're certainly one of those. Must be why you were recently named Poet Laureate. For those who may not know, what is the Poet Laureate program?
The Poet Laureate program was created by Mayor Daniella Levine Cava. The first Poet Laureate was Richard Blanco in 2022. And then the second one was Caridad Moro-Grondlier, who was appointed in 2024, and I am the third Poet Laureate. And the program was created to help recognize poetry in Miami-Dade County, to serve as a sort of ambassador of sorts for the literary arts and poetry, and bring poetry closer to the people. And yeah.
And what sorts of things do you do as the Poet Laureate to make that happen? I guess, like you said, you're bringing the poetry to the people through, name some of the types of programs or projects that facilitate that.
In my particular capacity, I was the mayor's poetry ambassador starting in 2021. And then I helped support the poets who were Poet Laureates. So Richard Blanco had a program called, his signature project, we'll call it, was Miami's Favorite Poems. And then Caridad had a signature project called Generation 305. So I helped support their projects, in addition to doing some of my own sonic crown projects for the mayor and residents of Miami-Dade County. And now that I'm the Poet Laureate, I've made it a point to try to find ways to make poetry more accessible to people. So I just launched 2, I'll call them more mini projects because they're not my signature projects quite yet. I'm working on something else. We can talk about that in a little bit, but one of them is called Songs for America. It's an official project in celebration of America's 250th.
Very timely.
Yeah, and it was 7 local poets writing sonnets in celebration of America in Miami-Dade County, and those can be found on our government poetry website, which is www.miamidade.gov/poetry. And then I just recently launched Miami Moves Me.
That's right.
And that, I think, is a cool way to bring poetry to people by placing poems on public transit.
Yeah.
I have to give a shout out to the Department of Transportation and Public Works for being open to this project, and Maria Boudet and Stacy Miller for being strong supporters of poetry as well, and helping me find ways. Maria actually came up with the name Miami Moves Me. I can't take credit. So thank you, Maria. Thank you if you're watching.
Shout out. And I love that in particular because it bridges my 2 worlds, right? My world as a writer and a creative, and then my world working in transportation. And I take my material and I read them. and they're great.
Well, thank you.
So you curate those, you select?
I do. Well, for the first tranche that we had, those poems were poems that were submitted through Kari Dodge Generation 305 project. I was trying to help her find a way to close out her project. I thought, what if we do something public art? So I chose a handful of sonnets that would work. Well, they're not all sonnets, actually. A handful of poems that would display well on the train screens because they're a certain size and the poems can't be too long. So that was from her Generation 305 project that I curated those. And then Songs for America will be coming up in July. Those were poems that I solicited. I reached out to 6 of my poet friends in the community and said, hey, would you be willing to write a poem in celebration in the form of a sonnet of both America and Miami-Dade County? I want some positive poetry to come out of this. And so we did that as part of the county's official.
So it's like when the county commissions public art, and someone does it specifically for that purpose.
Yeah, I've been soliciting, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm open to things. I'm starting small because obviously there are other things that have to be displayed on the transit screens. I can't have just poetry. We have announcements and other things that are important for people.
Stations.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah.
But I love that the poetry is there because, listen, commuting can be stressful.
Can be.
And I also love that it forces you away from your own personal screen to actually look up and around you. And I see people doing it. I see people reading it. So it's a great project. Congratulations.
I'm glad people are enjoying it. Thank you.
Maybe I'll get my poem up there one day.
You never know.
I kind of know people. We'll see. So listen, we kind of just jumped right in, but let's take a step back.
Okay.
What in your mind is poetry? Because
oh, wow.
Writing is a very broad category. So what is it that makes a poem a poem? It doesn't have to rhyme necessarily. So it's not necessarily that it rhymes. So how would you define it?
That's
is it one of those things like you know it when you see it?
Yes, but look, I don't want to necessarily be elitist with my definition of what a poem is, right? I think it can be open. I do believe there's a certain craft element involved. Sure. Rhyme in certain ways has fallen out of fashion, but I don't necessarily mind poems that rhyme. I think a poem should have a certain level of craft to it. What makes a poem, it's not just some rambling thoughts. There's a bit of structure depending on how much we want to get into the element of craft. It may or may not be in the form of a poem, of a form. Like a sonnet is a type of a poem, right? That's structured. There are people who write prose poems that are not necessarily lineated. They're just blocks of text. So all of those are valid forms of poetry. To me, it's a container of expression. Okay. And for me, it has a degree of music to it. For me to really enjoy it. Yeah. There are different tools we can use. Like anaphora is a term. It means repetition. Poets use different tools in their toolbox, I think, to create poems. Can anything be a poem? I mean, maybe, but I do like to hear a little bit. For me, a poem that resonates. Let me put it that way, because again, I don't want to be elitist with my definition, but a poem that resonates has a certain sonic quality to it, and I hear those little tools here and there. Maybe a little, slant rhyme, even if it's not direct, like end rhyme or inner rhyme, but some sort of musicality to it.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of similarity between music and poetry. Music is essentially poetry set to musical notes. I mean, in a way, right? The lyrics are in many ways, I think so. Poetry. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have different definitions of poetry, but for me, it does have a sort of sonic quality, and I feel like it should make me feel something. I mean, regardless of whether or not I understand it. There are poems, and it's a poem because it just makes me feel a certain way. Right. It's not the same as fiction. It's a container. That's important too. I think that it fits within a certain container, right? A poem. I mean, there are book length poems. Yeah. I've seen it, but the difference between a short story and a poem. I think by the container that it's in and how it sounds to the ear and how it makes you feel. Yeah, and it's funny, and it has such a rich history. I mean, I think we were creating poems before man could write, right?
Well, there was an oral tradition.
Oral traditions were passed down. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I guess the repetition or that container or the structure made it memorable, so it could be passed down.
Yeah, it started in an oral tradition, almost more in a way of memorizing things before people actually wrote it down. Right. So it has a very long tradition. Absolutely.
So it's interesting that you say that I guess modern poetry is kind of getting away from the rhyming scheme because I think most people, when they think of poetry, first think, okay, it rhymes, right? And certainly those of us who grew up on Dr. Seuss, very much. Still my favorite poet.
No, that's fair.
I love Dr. Seuss. But yeah, so the other day I took my first crack at writing, I guess it would be a what do you call it? A freeform
Yes.
poem that didn't rhyme.
Mhm.
And I wasn't sure I was going to like it. And the more I read it and tweaked it, the more I liked it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a new horizon for me. But that's what's in now, right?
Well, I don't want to say that poems that rhyme are out. It's
Okay.
just that I think that people try to push boundaries a
Sure.
little bit past the traditional forms that nursery rhyme that you referred
Right.
to almost, right? So you can create poems through lineation, right? Where someone takes a breath is important. So when you're looking at a poem on a page, there's obviously poems for the page and poems for the stage. And I think a lot of poets try to do both. Some poets do some poems better for the stage than they do for the page, and vice versa. But for me, when I'm writing a poem, I have some that incorporate rhyme, but I don't focus quite as heavily on the end rhyme because I think poets now are finding different ways to make poems musical that's not so quite direct end rhyme as you would have seen in some of the more traditional sonnets from the past.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you've been writing poetry for a long time.
Yes.
When, if you could remember, when did you start and what drew you to it?
I don't remember not writing poetry, if that makes any sense. My mother read poetry to me from a very, very young age. I remember hearing poetry. And I think Dr. Seuss was something she would read to me. I remember just little things like big A, little a, what begins with A, just little things like that. And it's just always been something that I hear. I hear poetry. I wake up with poetry in my head. It's almost something that I can't escape it. It's just there. I feel like maybe it's just something that a person is born with, and maybe certain people nurture it. But I've always heard poetry and music. They've both been very important to me for a very long time.
Do you draw inspiration for your poems from the external world, or is it very internal? Like, do you meditate, or is it just a combination and it comes from all places?
It's definitely a combination. I mean, there are projects that I do that are intentional. Like sometimes I'll be commissioned to do something. For example, Miami City Ballet reached out to me and they asked me to write a series of poems for art cards that they were going to put out to their subscribers. For that exercise, I was given some photos to react to. That was an exercise in ekphrasis, where you're reacting as a poet to a visual art work. And in my mind, I said, okay, I'm going to channel this. I want to respond in some way to this, but I turned it on its side a little bit because I made it a little bit less direct and a little bit more surreal just because of the fantastical nature of the ballets that were being performed. But I gave myself a constraint. I said, I want all of these poems to be 7 lines. And I'll do that sometimes because then I know they're going to fit on the card.
True.
And also it sort of creates a series where the poems speak to each other and they all have a similar look. So it just depends on the project and the book I'm working on.
Love it. And what I love about that, and I think it's demonstrated in the work you do, is that you believe in collaboration. Right?
I do.
So
I do a lot.
it's not just poetry, and you write it in a book, you put it on a shelf, and people may or may not read it. You're partnering with different organizations. You're bringing poetry to the public through all these different mediums, including trains.
Yeah.
And so what are some of those other collaborations that I guess you and or the county are working on or with?
So both of the projects that I mentioned earlier are collaborative, and the signature project that I'm going to be doing, it's going to be the intersection of poetry and music. I've reached out to a couple of organizations. Breaking news. I've reached out to a couple of organizations to see, just to put out some feelers to see, but I'd really like to curate a set of poems by local poets I admire. And I really want to focus on the musicality of the poems and then find musicians who would be willing to respond to the poem. So the poet would read the poem in their voice, and then
I love that.
Musician will respond. And I'm hoping it leads to something that's recorded and can be shared in a lot of public spaces and maybe even a performance.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm going to reach out to the Academy of American Poets. They do a fellowship program every year for Poets Laureate, and there's a grant that comes along with it. So because I believe in paying poets and artists for their work, I'm not asking anyone to do it for free, but I think it could be beautiful.
Curious, is that going to be like spontaneous? Like you're going to put them in a room together and see how they kind of feed off each other? Or is it going to be like, okay, we're pairing you up and take some time to do it right? I mean, I'm curious. Is it like more
I'm-
jazz or?
Yeah, no, what I'm thinking of doing is asking the poets to send me a voice recording of them reading a poem. They can just
Okay.
use their voice memo app. Doesn't have to be anything
Yeah.
fancy. Sending that to a musician and then having a musician set it to music.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to take their time with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do live performances as well. I just did one at Books and Books for Songs
cool.
for America. I had a little jazz trio. It was really
Nice.
cool. We read some poems and we improvised. But for this project, I'm thinking
Improvise.
it's a
That
little
was the
more
word I was looking for.
structured.
Improvisational.
Yeah, just a little more,
Yeah.
more structured and
Yeah.
giving that musician time to really take in the poem and respond to it with whatever instrument speaks to them.
So the reading you did at Books and Books, that was of your own book?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I that was for Songs for America.
Okay.
So I had
Those were the artists that you had picked.
correct. The seven. Richard
Specific.
Blanco was one. Kari
Gotcha.
Dodmore Gronlier was one. There were seven of us, and I wrote a sonnet too in celebration of Miami and America. And then I invited a jazz trio to come, and we just did it live.
Fantastic.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love Books and Books for that sort
I
of
do
thing,
too.
right?
Mitchell Kaplan is
He
just
is.
so generous and
Thanks again,
fantastic.
Mitch.
Yes. Shout out to Mitchell Kaplan. We're going to
And
have a lot of
his whole
shout
team.
outs.
And his team.
And his whole team. Yes.
Yeah.
For
But,
sure.
you know, they have so much programming. I think he told me when he was on the program, they have over 400 events a year. So that's more than one a day. And it
Yes.
includes the full spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of literature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Including poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm used to reading poetry on its own, kind of on a per poem basis. I've
Mhm.
never, I have to admit, I don't think I've ever picked up an actual book of poetry.
Okay.
So what is that side of that business, if you will,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, look like? Is it kind of the same as writing any other book, or is it a different process?
Hmm.
Is it typically more difficult to sell? Like, I'm just curious
Hmm.
how the world of poetry books works versus maybe something like fiction.
So I think the process can be different depending on the poet. For me personally, I don't always know that I'm working on a book.
Hmm.
I start working on a series of poems. Maybe it just starts with a one poem. I can give you an example, and I'm going to give you your first book of poetry today. It's
Excellent.
this one here. This
excited,
one.
I'm
This is my
excited.
new book. It's a flip chat book. It's called Dolce Vita on one side, and the other side is called Let There Be a Little
I
Light.
love that.
And this started out just as an idea. I wanted to write a series of 15-line poems. You know, the sonnet is traditionally 14 lines. I wanted to do it as 15 lines. I wanted to add an extra line.
Mm.
And I wanted them to be almost like diary entries. So I wrote this series of poems, and then I started sending them out one by one, and they started getting picked up. And I thought, okay, this might have some legs. Maybe I should turn this into something. But then, you know, to answer your question about how do books work. So there are, you know, a handful of these, right? It's 19 total. Is that enough? I'm sorry, 18 total. Is that enough to make a book? Not really. It's enough to make a chapbook, maybe, but even then that's considered a micro chap. And you know,
Okay.
publishers are always thinking about what's going to sell. They
Mhm.
need to stay afloat, right? So I said, okay, I could do like you usually need about 40 poems or 40 pieces, right? To put together a full-length collection at a minimum, I'd say. But for some reason, I felt like the number I had was perfect and I didn't want to stretch it. So then I said, you know what? I want to do another exercise. And that was this
Sure.
light series where I decided to channel my favorite poet of the deceased poets, Sylvia Plath. And I decided to write 10-line poems that were in response to colors of light. And I wrote them between the hours of 5 and 7 a.m.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
on my iPhone starting. But the point is that I knew that I needed to fill a certain page count in order to get a publisher to pick this up, right? This is an experimental chapbook because it's, like I said, 2-in-1. And I started sending it out to different publishers. And truth be told, I didn't get a lot of yeses right away just because of the experimental nature of it. A lot of them said, oh, I'd be willing to take it, love your work, but can you do 40 of the Dolce Vita style, or could you do 40 of the
Right.
light style? And I said, no,
No.
I don't want to. This is what I want to sell. I don't know why, but this is where my head is right now. And I finally found a publisher called Bottle Cap Press. and they were willing to do. They actually specialize in chapbooks, which chapbook is like a mini book, right? And they loved it. But the challenge was, I said I want it to be 2-in-1, and they hadn't done one of those before. And they said, well, we'll try it out and we'll see how it does. It's been doing pretty well, I have to say. Yeah, but it's different from fiction, just to use another form, or a novel, in the sense that I think a lot of times when people are trying to get a novel picked up by a publisher, you're querying, right? I didn't do a query. I started sending it out through contests. There are contests, but then I also just submitted it to various publishers who do open calls.
Okay.
So I sent it to a few contests, but again, I think the format of it was a little challenging for people. Then I started doing open calls. Bottle Cap had an open call. They were looking for new chapbooks, and I submitted it, and it got picked up there.
I love that you could go directly to the publisher and skip the whole literary.
You can.
Nothing against literary agents, but it's just an additional step in the process when you're writing fiction. So are the publishers who publish these types of books typically focused on poetry, or is it just one of? It depends probably on the publisher.
It depends on the publisher. I think that Bottle Cap tends to publish a lot of poetry. I'm actually an editor for a press called Jackleg Press. It's out of DC. It's a smaller independent press. They publish poetry, creative nonfiction, fiction. So a lot of the smaller independent presses, one press I really love is called Copper Canyon. If we're talking about just poetry presses, they only publish poetry, anthologies, etc. Grey Wolf is another independent press I really love. They do fiction as well as poetry. But yeah, I mean, to your point earlier, there isn't always a lot of money in poetry, so it's kind of a labor of love.
Yeah.
It's
but for the poet and the publisher,
for both. Yeah. You're lucky if you make a couple dollars off each book that you sell, but I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I love it. So
is anyone publishing poetry here locally in the South Florida area that you know of?
There used to be a press called Highlight that was affiliated with Miami. They do some anthologies, and they do some chaps in partnership with Cave Canem, which is an African-American focused organization. JJ, who you had on here.
On the Jitney,
has a press. Mango Publishing.
Mango.
My friend Yadira, who's at Miami now, used to work for them. I'm not quite clear on where they are. There aren't, unfortunately, a whole lot of Miami-based presses. That's been something I've been contemplating for a while.
Maybe we need some kind of publishing incubator here in Miami.
If anybody wants to help us with funding, that's why I'm looking directly at the camera right now. Maybe we're on to something. Maybe we could do it. We could.
You don't have Ken Griffin's phone number? We'll give him a quick buzz.
No comment.
So listen, you have this lovely book in your hand, so let's have you read something from it, or your other book, because I think you brought another one.
Oh, well, that was the novel, just in case we wanted to talk. We were talking collaboration. I'll read a little poem for you. So as I was saying earlier, these are all 15-line poems, and I wrote these as diary entries, and this one in particular, I feel, is rooted in Miami. And the first line of each poem is the title. And this one is called I Finished the Lover and We Take a Walk. And for those who don't know, The Lover is a book by a French author called Marguerite Duras, who unfortunately is no longer with us. I finished the lover and we take a walk. We head toward the new food court that just opened. The sun sends us to the other side of the street. We pass by a building with a balcony bleeding bougainvillea. The old city peeks through the reconstruction. An ad for perfume, leather, a liquor long ago expired. People pack the lobby like vultures on a carcass. A girl takes a selfie next to the bar in the center. Everything is silver, blue, and glass. The smell of roasted tomatoes leads us to Cicchetti. We order Prosecco and tapas, served on small wooden plates. I like watching the man at the oven who makes our food. How he moves, like pleasure, is his only concern. So I think you noticed there that there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of rhyme.
Right.
But there's a
cadence to it.
Cadence, repetition, a liquor long ago expired. You hear the repetition of the L sounds. the other side of this book, Let There Be a Little Light, this is the side where I actually did employ a little rhyme. And I'll read a short poem. These are just 10 lines. You'll hear a little bit more of a rhyme scheme here. This one's called Look at the Rain Through the Castle. Look at the rain through the castle. Nothing is stranger than air. Here we go again, drinking rosewater. I shut the door, but the light filters there. The light on the wheel is a centipede. The spokes are the strands of its hair. The lake holds the secrets of summer. 2 girls named Indigo once drowned on a dare. Their dull skulls scrape my tongue like rock candy. I taste their names like blue violets on air. So you hear the musicality to it a little bit more, right? And that's one of the things that I wanted to do with this book is have this side that sort of resurrects the rhyme that has gone a little out of fashion, especially end rhyme, and then have this more sort of, so this is kind of more like the dream surreal, and this is more like the lyrical diary.
Gotcha.
Day to day.
A little bit of a yin yang.
Yeah, that was intentional.
Call and response. I love it.
Yeah, that was this is fun to write. I really enjoyed writing this book a lot because I didn't put too much pressure on myself to meet that 40-page minimum. Yeah. That's usually required for a full length. Most of my books are full lengths. In fact, this is the only one that's not. So I really enjoyed that experimental aspect of it, and being able to have the two sides that explore different aspects of. Well,
I'm looking forward to reading it. So
thank you. That's your copy. I'm going to sign it for you later.
You got to sign it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see that you have a bookshelf here, Javier. So we got to help you fill it up.
I'm not going to pretend that they're mine, but
well,
sure.
Hey,
they wouldn't mind if I borrowed one or two.
Yeah.
So what is the other book?
So the other book, you were asking me about collaboration.
Yes.
So this was a little bit of a wild experiment that I decided to do. There's a press called 30 West Publishing out of Philadelphia, and they decided to do an experiment where they reached out to writers and asked, would you be willing to write a novel in 30 days? But it gets better. Not only write a novel in 30 days, but write a novel with 2 other people.
Okay. In
my case, I was paired up with 2 people I had never met. One lived in Los Angeles and one lived in Nigeria.
Wow.
We had 30 days to write a book. And I was able to choose the genre. I wanted horror. So I wrote this book.
How very Mary Shelley of you.
Right?
I think that's about how long it took her to write it, if not less.
It was an intense assignment. So so this book is called Julie or Sylvia, and I mentioned earlier that Sylvia Plath is my favorite poet, and it's about a woman who wakes up and she's in a London asylum, and she doesn't know if she's dead or alive.
Nice.
But she thinks she may be the deceased poet Sylvia Plath, and so this book is the product. It's written in, I can't even remember how many, 89, is it 89? 89 chapters. And we went back and forth. I was
going to say, so you did one chapter, then they do the next?
Well, it depended. Sometimes I did 2 chapters. It just kind of depended on the length, but we went back and forth and we just did this all via email. Created a shared document, Google Doc, and we just kind of went in, and I tried to set some parameters. Let's try to write, 500 words a day if we can, because we got to get through this. And, obviously we had a minimum word count, but this. I
could see you being the one cracking away. Okay.
I really was.
Let's stay on.
and full disclosure, I picked up some slack. I'll tell you that because I said I will not miss. I've never missed a deadline in my life, and we're not missing this one. So this was.
I know this of you from having worked with you.
Yeah. Was written at some very odd hours, like 4 to 7 in the morning. Because
you've said that twice now. So do you tend to write in the morning? Do you have like a regular routine, or is it just wherever and whenever it comes to you? You like to write outside at a park? Like, what is your typical kind of pattern, if you will?
We're both really busy professionals, so we find the space when we can. I don't do a lot of writing at work because I don't have time. I'm in meetings all day. So it's either really early in the morning or late at night. I find myself most creative when I first wake up in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I force myself because my brain, that stage between dream and waking, is so powerful and I think prolific as an artist. So I force myself, and I'll tell you, this is going to sound very Proustian, but I write a lot in my bed. Okay. I really do. I wake up and I might just start writing on my notes app in my iPhone. And then obviously you have to then email that and put it into a Word document and go from there. But I write a lot on my iPhone when I first wake up.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that is when you're most creative.
Yeah.
Because you're still in that dream state. At least I am, until that first or second or third cup of coffee.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously the editing comes in,
Sure.
that I tend to edit at night.
You edit your own work?
I do.
So
and then, I'll edit my own work, and then depending on if it's this is the only novel that I've written. So this one was an experiment. But for my poetry, I edit my own poems. I have a few trusted readers, but I really trust my inner voice a lot. And I know if something's landing, if it gets picked up in a journal. I submit a lot of my work. And if it gets picked up, I know I'm heading somewhere. And then the poems that just kind of fizzle out, because that happens. I mean, not everything's for everyone, and some things are just poems we write for ourselves, and they aren't for the public. So
for therapy.
for therapy, or just maybe I wanted to get something out, but maybe no one wants to publish it, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, listen, you're not going to believe this, but we're out of time. I mean, 30 minutes going to fly. But I did actually write a poem for you, and
let me set my book down. I'm all yours.
an amateur, and it does rhyme, so I'm a little old school.
I love it. Let's go.
So before we close the program, an ode to Nicole, our poet laureate.
Wow.
In this great county of sunshine and flare, where languages dance on the salt-laden air, there rises a voice both graceful and true. Nicole, we're so lucky our laureate is you. With verses that shimmer by the Biscayne Bay light, you gather our days and give them new sight, turning moments to meaning, the simple to art, threading all of Miami through each living heart. A colleague by day, a poet by soul, you remind us that words can make fractured things whole, that rhythm and rhyme aren't just lines on a page, they're the pulse of a people, the voice of an age. So here's to your pen, your passion, your flame, to the beauty you build in community's name. May your poems keep rising like dawn on the sea, to lift up our beloved Miami.
Wow.
Boom, right there. That's going to go in your next book.
I mean, somebody put this on a train, okay?
I love it. Yes, let's put it on a train. I love
this is, no one's ever written, well, I shouldn't say no one.
There was that boyfriend in college.
I was going to say, in adult life, I don't think anyone has ever written me an ode. So thank you. Thank you, Javier. This is really good. And look, you really maximized the page. I'm impressed. Nice quatrains. I think we're on to something.
I appreciate it. Let's stop there before you start critiquing. That's good.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you're doing on behalf of the county to, support and celebrate Miami's literary community, specifically poets. We didn't even we'll have to have you back because we didn't talk about a lot of the other poets in Miami. So stay tuned for the next episode of the Poetry Book Hub with Nicole Tallman. But folks, that is all the time we have here on the Miami Book Hub. I want to thank my guest again. I want to thank Miami's community newspapers and Emily back there behind the screens for producing the program. I want to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. Please like, please share, please continue to tune in. We have some great guests lined up over the next several weeks. In the meantime, keep reading, keep writing, and stay curious, Miami.